Well, hello everyone, and great Saturday afternoon. I hope you, as always, are having a great Saturday and a great weekend. My name is Don Terrell, and I want to welcome you to another great episode of The Color of Motion, where I highlight my friends in the industry of motion graphics, animation, visual effects, cartoons, and comics. This huge space that I love so much. Again, I want to welcome you to the show. You know the drill. Say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from while I'm checking to make sure all the broadcasts are going out for sure. I hope, like I said, everybody is having a great weekend. You can catch me live it's Saturday. It's Saturday every Saturday afternoon at 3 p.m. Central Standard Time on and I always get this wrong. I'm trying to get it right. My Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn page is where you can catch me every Saturday afternoon. Of course, if you do happen to be tuning in from Facebook, you may need to give StreamYard permission to pull your avatar and comment so I can see and show you some love on the show. Go to StreamYard.com/Facebook. Give StreamYard permission to pull your avatar. So, like I said, I can see your face. Miss Salve Black is tuning in. I hope you're doing well, Salve. I appreciate you tuning in. She was a great past guest. So looking forward to having her back on the show for sure. Always looking forward to having all my guests back on the show. So it's always good connecting. That's why I love connecting with everybody. And I'm glad I can't get through everything because it gives me the opportunity to have them back on the show. Okay, I am definitely, she's tuning in from YouTube. So I'm obviously broadcasting on YouTube. I am broadcasting on my LinkedIn channel, and I want to make sure that I am broadcasting on my Facebook channel. Again, I'm so thrilled that you always tune in. I appreciate everybody that supports the show. It's really, and I was just talking to my guest about this just before the show. It's really gaining traction. People are really starting to enjoy it and like it. And I want to thank you all for supporting the channel and supporting the show. It definitely means a lot to me. Miss Lauren Woods, I appreciate you tuning in from YouTube. I'm getting a lot more YouTube, which I love because I want my YouTube. Make sure, which that brings me to the point. If you are tuning in from Facebook or LinkedIn, it's great, but I would love for you to go over to subscribe to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Don Terrell, so that you can get notified of all the great content when I go live with the show and other things, and all the great content I plan on putting on the channel for sure. You've definitely been helping the channel grow. So, like I said, I appreciate that. Subscribe, hit the bell notification, and you know the drill. Okay, it looks like I am good to go. I always like checking out and making sure from watching it from LinkedIn. I don't know why. Okay, again, please jump on, say hello. Let me know where you're tuning in from, how your weekend is going. And we are about ready to rock and roll. Like I said, had a great. My guests were my friend was just chopping it up before the show. I'm so looking forward to sitting down. I've been super excited about sitting down with him, talking about what's going on. A lot of great things have been happening with him, and it's going to be fun to sit down and share it with you guys. So we are ready to go. Broadcasting live. And let me get this together here. Like I said, it's tough when you're doing it by yourself. You're having to do all the, which I'm super excited. Again, I've been telling people and kind of throwing out, little notifications along the way. Some of you may have caught some of the little live broadcasting tests I've been doing, testing out the new system, testing out the new live stream platform to make sure everything works. But man, I am super excited to unveil the new graphics, the new intro, everything new that I've been doing. I think it's really going to take the show up to the next level. So I'm super excited to share that with you, and definitely want you to be in on the journey. All right. With that, let me just introduce my guest and my friend. He is a highly motivated 2D director, animator, and owner of MOCO Productions LLC, currently located in Moncks Corner, South Carolina. His passion for storytelling and high-quality animation allows him to promote diversity and inclusion, which is what we're all about here on the show. His military service has instilled in him the integrity and professionalism that allows him to quickly and efficiently meet deadlines and exceed performance expectations. His creativity, attention to detail, and knowledge of the latest animation software helps him turn his clients' ideas into reality. Please, everybody, help me give a warm welcome to my guest and my friend, Mr. DeAndre Reid. Mr. DeAndre, appreciate you tuning in. Oops, I lost him there. Oh, hold on. There we go.
Hey.
Gotta give you the intro.
Great intro.
Trust me, everybody on the new system, it'll be so much smoother. All this will be so much smoother and so much better. Man, DeAndre, thank you. I want to first thank you so much for being on the show, coming on. Like I said, we've had a chance to connect some time ago. But like I said, I just immediately fell in love with your art. And then when we had a chance to talk, just clicked, and so glad that we're friends, and so glad that you're a part of the Color of Motion family.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. Well, let's get it kind of kicked off. Tell me a little bit. Tell us a little bit about what you were like as a child, getting started. Did all this art start, like it typically does for a lot of artists? Did it start at a young age for you?
Definitely not. definitely not. I didn't start really drawing until I was probably about 21.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, so I as a kid, my dad was in the military. He was in the army. So we traveled around a lot. I'm pretty introverted, so sports as a kid was like really important to me because it allowed me to like meet a lot of new people and easily make friends moving around from place to place. So but I didn't really do a lot of art as a kid. I remember like one art class in 7th grade that I had, but like other than that, I did like normal, like if you give me a piece of paper and like crayons, of course I would draw, but I didn't really do a lot of art as a kid.
That's interesting. So, I mean, how do you, what was it that initially, clicked for you that, okay, this is what I want to do? If, you didn't do art like seriously or really kind of were into it like a lot of people maybe tend to start out.
So it started out as like just watching animation in general and like cartoons. It was kind of like something to relax me after work because I spent 8 years in the Air Force. So after work I would kind of like watch cartoons to kind of do something to like relax me, and I'd be like sitting on the couch. Maybe I eat and watch something on Netflix, right? So I remember what first got me really into it is I was watching Kids Next Door, I believe, on Netflix. And I thought to myself, I was like, they have to make this somehow. Like, how exactly are they making this? Like, it never really registered to me that there were actually people behind the scenes, like, drawing these, like, characters over and over again to make them move. So I looked into it online, and I realized, I was like, there are these people called animators that are like making these cartoons and drawing them. And I like immediately got hooked on the idea that I could like create these worlds just by like drawing these characters that I could create and make them move and have like their own lives within like a world that I create, right?
Yeah.
So I immediately like jumped right in, and I bought a light box, right? So I bought the light box and I started drawing, and then I realized, I was like, how can I see the video? Like, I have a light box, I have the paper, but I don't have a way to like record it so that I can see them move. So like I got a camera to start recording it, and then I was like, oh man, now I need a program to put in the computer to watch, like to actually watch it. So I actually ended up using Adobe After Effects, which I don't recommend for like to start off with, but it worked out. And then I looked more into like what are easier ways to do this, and I found Flash, and I was like, oh, I can just download Flash and do it on the computer, and that would be much faster, right? Yeah. So yeah, that's pretty much like how I got started, and from there I pretty much just fell in love with animation, and it started to become more than a hobby, like really fast. I'd be like, at my last year on active duty in the Air Force, I had decided that I was like, okay, I want to go to school and do this. So it started becoming a thing where I'm like at work, like drawing characters, right, on sticky notes, and I'd be sticking them up around the office, right? And my supervisor would come in and be like, what are all these like characters like around the office? Take these down. So I'd be like, all right, take them down and like store them somewhere for later. But yeah, so I applied to a couple schools, but because I started like drawing so late, I didn't really have a portfolio. So that was like my biggest problem. Getting into school, and luckily I actually got accepted to SCAD somehow without a portfolio. So what I'm thinking happened was, because I had since the VA would pay for my school, right? Yeah. I'm assuming SCAD was like, well, at least like we'll get the money, right? Right. So like we'll let them in because we know we're going to get paid, right? Yeah. So that's what I'm assuming happened. So yeah, so after I got out of the Air Force, I started going to SCAD and taking classes there. So that's pretty much how like my animation journey started.
I've been meeting a lot of SCAD people for sure, and definitely Salve SCAD alum for sure. And it's interesting. It's funny that you said like when you started, man, I didn't know people got paid for this, you know, right. And I was watching. It's still amazing me. Some people, like I said, think that. I don't think I thought that even when I was young and really. I wasn't really into Disney, but I watched Disney. But I knew that, okay, there were people that were making a living doing this kind of stuff. But it was funny because you said that. I was watching on Netflix a Pixar story, and it was just a story about Pixar and stuff like that. And they were interviewing John Lasseter, and he said the same thing. He was like, man, when I first saw animation, it didn't dawn on me that people actually made a living doing this.
Yeah, I don't know what I thought. I don't know if I thought there were just like robots in the background, like creating this stuff. I don't know what I thought. It just like, I was watching it, and then all of a sudden it clicked, and I was like, somehow they got to make this. Like, someone has to be making this.
Somebody's got to be making it. It's got to be a living. Somebody's got to be doing it. So for sure. So it's interesting that you we're talking about your military service. So what was your idea of, before you kind of found animation, what was your idea of what you wanted to do or wanted to be?
Right. So that was actually one of the main reasons why I joined the Air Force, because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. So before that, after I got out of high school, right, I had applied to a few schools before, but at the time I was living in South Carolina. Like I've moved around a lot, but at the time I was living in South Carolina, and I didn't know that I didn't have South Carolina residency. So I was applying for schools in South Carolina, but I would have had to pay out-of-state tuition. And my parents were pretty much like, yeah, we can't afford that, right? So what ended up happening is I ended up moving to Georgia with my parents. And I started working at Burger King, and I was taking schools at classes at Savannah Tech, right? So I actually was like not doing well at Savannah Tech at all because I was like so unmotivated because I had applied for all these schools.
What were some of the classes, or what were you? I mean, were you just taking general college classes, or were you taking like something specific in?
No, at the time I was just taking foundation courses, right?
Okay.
So I was like pretty unmotivated because I had applied to all these schools and I had got into these schools in South Carolina and then realized that I couldn't go to them. So I was doing things like going to work and then going to class and going to sleep pretty much.
Yeah.
Sorry, Mom. I don't know if my mom knew that.
Yeah, we get off this show, what?
So I realized like this no offense to anybody who's working at Burger King or any fast food restaurants, but I realized that like this isn't what I want to be doing like long term. So I was like, I need to find something that I can do and like get paid well or decently. And my dad at the time was in the Army. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to join the Army. Like he's been doing pretty well through the Army. So I'm going to join the Army. And I told my dad, I was like, hey, I'm going to join the Army. And he was like, no, you're not. And I was like, what? He was like, no, you're not. You're not joining the Army. And he was like, join the Air Force just because that's like a better branch, especially, well, to him, he said that was a better branch, especially if you're like trying to have a life outside of the military or like start a family. It's much easier in his opinion. That's what he said. So I decided to, so I went and I talked to a recruiter, and like, it was like a couple months later, I was like at basic training.
Okay. So what were you doing what was your role in the Air Force?
Oh, I was an aircraft mechanic.
Okay. Oh, wow. Aircraft mechanic. Okay. So, but you didn't want to be a mechanic outside of the, or do like aircraft outside of.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
No, so it pretty much just gave me time to kind of figure out what I really wanted to do.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. So do you feel like I said, that you kind of came up into it a little later than normal and you didn't have a portfolio? Was it a big kind of learning curve and catching up curve for you once you did get to SCAD and were getting into the animation part of it?
Definitely, for sure. So at first, like SCAD was like, when I got to SCAD, I realized like how many really talented artists there are. And then I was like, man, I have like a lot of work to do to like catch up and like be on the level of my peers. Because like I said, I don't even think it was probably like maybe a year before I had started drawing. So I was like, I have a lot of work that I really need to do. And it was probably like for the first 2 years at SCAD, like I had like, let's just put it this way. I went to my advisor, right? And like my first year, I think it was like my second or third quarter there at SCAD. And I went to my advisor and like I was showing him my portfolio, and he wasn't like, oh man, this doesn't look good. He was kind of like, hey, have you ever thought of doing this or doing this? Like trying to push me away from animation. He was like, maybe you should look more into this stuff. So I knew, I was like, man, I definitely have a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. Which is a testament to everybody. Don't let other people sway you in a direction that you don't really want to go. I mean, just put in the work. And like I said, if you find later on down the line that there's a different route that you do want to go, then that's good. But like I said, having somebody that really encourages you and really pushes you forward is definitely something that's needed for sure. So how were your parents and kind of enthusiastic about your change and your shifting what you wanted to finally do when you told them, or?
So My parents were pretty supportive. They weren't like don't do it, but they also weren't like, oh yeah, you're gonna go be awesome. Like they were kind of like, yeah, we believe in you. If you really want to go do it, like go do it. You know, I think they were kind of skeptical about like where it would lead, but they weren't ever really like discouraging.
Yeah. I think that sounds like my mom. She was encouraging, but didn't really get it. It's like,
Right.
okay, what is this? You know, where is this going to kind of take you? But like I said, she didn't, and she knew I had talent, and she didn't discourage it. Unfortunately, like I said, she was in my corner, and I had other people in my corner, which is why, like I said, it's really important to have people that really kind of support you, even if they don't kind of understand where it may take you or what it might lead to, for sure. Before we dive into it some more, I'm going to play DeAndre's reel, check out some of his work, and we'll get back at it.
Okay, Coach is gonna handle it for you, Maddie, no problem.
Coach, don't worry. We're gonna get those.
Don't care, DJ. Ron, help me grab the giraffe and drag him out here. I got a plan.
Don't give up. They don't call me Gilbert Golden Toes for nothing. What we need is a routine.
Ow, my foot. Excuse me. Ow. Excuse me. The lawyer called and said you wouldn't sign the divorce papers. Again.
I don't understand why we have to get lawyers involved. I don't want to pay for that.
I'm paying for it.
Best friend of his bloopers is on him 5.
I wonder what's in it.
Well, it's a Insta montage of Lofi and Slippy and Neck doing things on a camera and taking pics and remembering thoughts.
You sold your money? Yeah. For what? Beans. And what did you do with those beans?
I ate them.
Tickle yourself.
Stop it, Lofi!
Now!
Quit it.
Oh, snap!
Woo! How about a game of water balloon tag, kiddies? Little girl, you're it.
You followed yourself to the letter. Your magic's good, but mine's way better.
Shannon, you're angry right now. You don't know what you're saying. Please, honey, take back what you said about Little Man Tate.
Goodbye, Ben.
Some awesome work there for sure. So what is it? I mean, what do you love about, you know, animation and just the whole process of animating?
So I think like what really got me into it at the beginning, like I was saying earlier, was that like I could create these characters and I could also create this world that the characters live in, and I could pretty much like make whatever I wanted, right? So I think that was the big thing that really like interested me from the beginning.
Good. So how did you wind up at Bento? I mean, what was it like trying to, you know, get when you finally graduated from SCAD and then got into a studio?
Right. So it all really like began at SCAD when I realized like how far I had to go, right? So I had to like create like this plan on how I was going to like create these goals to like figure out how I was going to reach like at the time, what was my final goal was getting into a studio. Yeah. So I realized that like everyone at SCAD were all making like the same exact assignments, right? So if I put into a reel all my assignments from SCAD and then apply for a job outside of SCAD, everyone else also did all of these assignments. Yeah. So like, how does your bouncing ball stand out from like 500 other bouncing balls? You know, like they're going to be like, we've seen this 499 other times. So I really started like hopping on to a lot of the like senior projects, as well as like by my junior year, I was actually applying for jobs already as like a freelance animator. So I was like, if I already have like studio, like professional level work in my demo reel, then it's not like I'm coming out of school and like trying to get my first job. They'll see my reel and be like, oh, he's actually like worked at other places before. So like the first step was applying for the first step was getting onto those senior films. And then I used the senior films to get jobs in like smaller studios. And then I used the smaller studios work to get a job at Bento Box.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much like how I got into Bento.
Gotcha. Which is always key about how do you make your demo reel stand out and different from all the rest, because their studios are getting tons and tons of stuff, and it's interesting. I saw one girl, she made a demo reel. It was basically almost like a little short, animated short. It wasn't your typical demo reel, but she made it like a short, but showed off all her different skills: 2D animation, 3D animation, character animation, and really polished. It was so creative. And it was funny because all the comments were like, okay, now we got to step up our game as far as this demo.
Yeah, for sure. Anything you have to do to make yourself stand out from everybody else, because like the industry itself is like so saturated and there's like so many people trying to get in. It's like you really have to like try and do extra stuff to actually get in.
Yeah. And I find, like I said, I found that once you kind of get in, and even kind of before, which is, why, building those relationships at school is so key. It's the relationships that you make along the way that really help you to kind of maneuver and get it into a lot of different places, because so many people work. It's like you said, it's so saturated and it's such a small industry. Everybody kind of tends to know everybody else,
right?
And has worked with everybody else at one point or another,
for sure.
So if you're friends and going to school or that type of thing, you get recommended a lot easier, a lot quicker than some others.
Yeah, so, for sure. Go ahead. So I was just going to say, definitely the hardest part is getting in. That's definitely the hardest part.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So where did MOCO Productions come from? I mean, how did that get birthed?
So last year I was actually working at Bento, and then I left Bento actually. So I was working at Bento. It was the first job that I got, and then I worked on Hoops, a show on Netflix, for 6 months, right? And I was like, I think I want to try and go off and do my own thing for a while, right? So that's how MOCO Productions started, and I was like out and about and like trying to create my own stuff and start up my own studio. But at first, it really didn't get that much traction at first, and I realized like I have to first like establish like relationships within the industry, because that 6 months wasn't really enough time for me to establish like really strong relationships with people. So during that year, I was also just like working as a freelance animator. So I worked like with a few other smaller studios as well. And the end of last year, Bento reached back out to me and I started working with them. Right. So pretty much MOCO Productions just started from me like saying, hey, I want to kind of go off and do my own thing. And that was just the beginning of it.
So what's your, kind of end goal of where you're maybe looking to create with MOCO?
Right. So right now the goal is to just be doing eventually the goal is to just be doing MOCO Productions and have a studio be hiring artists themselves, because the year that I wasn't at Bento, like I said, I was working freelance and I was establishing relationships like with other studios as well as smaller studios. So this year we've actually been able to do a lot of larger work. So we recently did a project with like BET, and I got that job like through one of the studios that I had worked with before, right? And we did a project for Hip Hop Public Health as well. They're like an organization in New York, and as well as, and like currently we're working on another BET project, and we've done like a lot of smaller projects in between those as well. So eventually the goal is to like definitely make like the 100% jump from like into MOCO Productions full time.
Gotcha. So obviously you do 2D, but do you have an inclination to try 3D or I mean, I'm pretty sure you probably touched a little on it at SCAD, but
right.
Is that just you just love 2D more than 3D, or is it just animation and as long as the story supports whatever medium, you're fine with it?
I mean, as far as like studio, I would be open to like a lot of different mediums, but myself, I haven't really jumped much into 3D animation because, like I was saying, I was so behind. I had to like make a decision on what I wanted to do and stick with it so that I could like catch up in that area rather than trying to do a bunch of different things and trying to do all those things at one time. So I have dabbled, like since school, I have dabbled in 3D stuff. So like I played around with Cinema 4D as well, and I've done some stuff in Cinema 4D, but mostly I just stick to 2D animation.
Gotcha. We're gonna dive we're gonna talk a little more about just the growing diversity that's starting to rise up. And the need for more diverse characters. But before we dive into that, we are going to take a quick commercial break there and check from our sponsors. But stay tuned. Again, if you have any comments, please make sure you throw them up in the in the comment section there, and we'll be right back. Well, hello. Welcome back. And you are checking out The Color of Motion. I am Don Terrell, and I am sitting here chopping it up with my good friend DeAndre Reid, 2D animator with Bento Box and MOCO Productions. We're starting to see a lot more diverse characters. What are your thoughts on the need for having diversity in the industry and starting to see characters that look like us or look like you? Was that a big thing when you were kind of getting into it? Because I know it was for me when I started, not seeing somebody that looked like me or characters that looked like me.
Right. Yeah, it was definitely like an issue trying to like find things that like I could really relate to, or find like characters that really looked like me. Like even like I remember like the Proud Family and like Static Shock.
Yeah.
And like I can't really like name a ton, but there were definitely a few, but there definitely needs to be more. And I think part of the issue is that like the characters that are created really reflect like the people who are currently in power, like as far as like who make all the decisions.
Yeah.
Right. So like there's not it's the industry isn't as diverse as it definitely could be. So which is why I feel like it's harder for like it was harder for me to find characters that looked like myself.
Yeah, and it's interesting that you said that, because like I said, that and it's not just, and it's funny because it's not just a black thing, because I was listening to actually Netflix put it on, but it was a panel on Asian animators, and the talk was still the same talk, which is why I can relate to it, that they don't see characters that look like them, and the characters they do see are just kind of caricatures of what they think that is, or we are. So they go through the same things of wanting to see more diverse characters. Do you feel like it's going to take not only content creators, but having people in the positions of making the decisions of yes and no, let's do this and let's do that?
For sure, because like we were talking about, it's difficult in itself to get into the industry.
Yeah.
But it's also difficult to like get into a position where you're making those decisions once you get into the industry, right? Yeah. So because a lot of times the people who are already in those positions stay in those positions for a long time, right? So when opportunities open up, a lot of times it's them like reaching out to their friends and saying like this opportunity is open, and then telling the person who's hiring that like, hey, I have a friend who is like interested in this position, and that person ends up getting the job, right?
Yeah.
So because there's a lack of diversity, it's like there's less of a chance of getting into that position, Yeah.
And it's unfortunate, and I always say it's kind of unfortunate that studios now are feeling this need to kind of step up with all the social stuff that's been going on. It's good to see that they're starting to take those steps, even though that's what they are, just steps on a path to getting better. And I do think there are studios out there that are kind of leading the way a little more than others. But that's what I was kind of thinking as I was listening to the panel of Asian animators the other day, was that those bigger companies that have been around, like Disney, for years, are so used to doing animation in that certain way. It's really hard for them to kind of break out of that mold or make that turn.
For sure, because like if it's a larger studio that's been around for a really long time, the way they've been doing things has been working. Yeah. So what would push them to change that, Yeah. So I feel like that like diversity within animation is going to come more from the smaller studios and like content creators rather than the bigger studios, because what they're doing is like working for them, and until it stops working for them, they're not going to make those changes.
Yeah. And I'm not going to say that companies, like I said, and I had this conversation kind of, and he's going to be a guest on in the upcoming weeks, and he's Jay Francis, VP of diversity for Disney, and we were kind of having this conversation. Disney, like all the other ones, I mean, they're making their changes and things like that. But like they were talking in the panel the other day, they have such a firm brand that they've already, like I said, that's been around for decades, that I was telling him I consider them almost like the Titanic. They're such a big ship. It's going to take a slow turn for them to really make, that turn. It's not going to be immediate, like you were saying, from the smaller studios or the more nimble studios like Netflix that are able to make these quick turns and put out much more diverse content, because they haven't been around for decades like Disney has, and
Right.
been doing Disney way of doing things. But it is, like I said, I think going to take people not only at the, it's going to take a change not only from the bottom up, but from the top down. I think
For sure.
that's getting people in those executive positions. What are some of the type of stories that you want to kind of tell and put out there?
I like a lot of things because like I've worked on like adult stuff and also kids stuff. I really like comedies. So but I also like it's a ton of different stuff. Like I want to tell like historical stories. I want to tell like I want to see like in general. I've always thought of it this way. I want to see like Black people doing everything. You know, like so like it doesn't really matter what it is. Like I want to see like in my stories. I want to see like it's just everyday life. Like one thing that stuck in my head over like the past couple of weeks, I was like on a walk around the neighborhood with my girlfriend, right? And I saw like these kids like siblings, and they were teaching their like youngest sibling, this little girl, to ride a bike, right? And she had finally got it, and they were so hyped. Like they were running down the street, like screaming. Like those like normal types of things. Those are like stories that I want to tell.
Yeah, and it's so, like I said, it's just so interesting that you said that, because that was another point that they brought up on the panel. It was like not maybe specifically telling Asian stories, but just telling everyday stories that we all go through and we all deal with, and our stories that they want to tell. If the characters happen to be Asian, that's great. But just like I said, we all laugh, we all love, and we all cry at the same things, and you know, have these same emotions. So it's just everyday emotions and stories that, I mean, we want to be able to tell. So you like, I mean, you said your range, and you're kind of like me. My range of what I like in animation goes from the silly to the, you know, the real, I'll say gory or violent, animation, or even the more cerebral type animation as well. But do you tend to kind of want to, like I said, stay in one genre or the other? I know I've talked to some that they like watching like, anime and this and that, but they really enjoy doing kids animation and things like that. So
not really. I've actually been like over the last year, I've been writing a story called Gadget City, right? And it's more of like an adult action sci-fi sort of thing.
Yeah.
But also like recently I wrote another story that I want to tell, and it's a kids show. So like so it's like two completely different things, but I don't favor one over the other,
Gotcha. Oh man. So what's been the best advice that you've gotten along the way that's kind of stuck with you, that, maybe in challenging times you kind of tend to fall back on, or rings in your head that somebody maybe have given you or said to you?
Probably work smarter, not harder. Right? So, and that's something like my mom's been like telling me my entire life pretty much, but it didn't really click with me. Like we talked about this earlier until I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? And he pretty much explains like how you don't really want to like trade your time for money, right?
Yeah.
And you want to pretty much like make your money work for you.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much like that's when it really clicked. And I was like, oh man, I was like, oh man, my mom's been telling me this like this entire time, but I have been going about it the wrong way.
Yeah. And it's funny, like, which is a great book. Everybody should pick up Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's definitely a book that you ought to read. But it's funny that you said that, and we kind of talked about this before the show. My last week's guest, Leif, and you connected with Leif and everything like that. But that was something we had talked about on the show really big because he's really entrepreneurial.
Yeah.
He comes from that point of view. So we were talking a lot about the business side of just really doing it and trading time for or money for hours,
right,
and that type of thing. And definitely something especially if you're wanting to have your own business, kind of making that shift in mindset for sure.
Right, for sure.
So if you were to give somebody coming up in the industry a piece of advice, is that the same thing that you would tell them? Work smarter, not harder, or?
I would, but then I would give an explanation. So I wouldn't just be like work smarter, not harder, and then just like run off into the distance or whatever. So I would tell them that, and then I would also tell them to put themselves first, right? Because a lot of times we go into these studios and then like that's the final goal, right? It's like, oh, I made it to the studio, so now I'm going to work here. But you're not gonna be working there for the rest of your life. Like, and if you do work there for the rest of the life, like ask for the rest of your life, ask yourself like what position will you be in at that point? Like if you look around the studio and you see like other people, I would say, who look like you, right? And they're not in like these managerial positions, say they've been working there for 10, 15 years, right? And they're still in the same position you are.
Yeah.
The chances of you like actually being in that managerial position probably aren't that high. So how are you going to position yourself so that you're in a position where you can say, like, if I were to lose my job, I would be okay. You know? Yeah. So that's what I would say. I would say work smarter, not harder, and then position yourself so that like that job in itself isn't the only thing that you have, you know?
Yeah. Do you feel some sort of I won't say obligation, but responsibility to younger Blacks coming up to kind of help lead the way or show the way of getting into industry, the journey in industry, thinking about it differently, like you just said?
For sure, definitely. So, like as a kid, I didn't really know like a lot of artists, which is why I think like it took me so long to like put together like someone is in the background of animation actually drawing and like making these things. So I remember like my uncle used to draw like Dragon Ball Z characters, but he wasn't like an artist. It was just kind of like, oh, I can draw Goku, and he would like show me how to draw Goku, right? And so one of the things that I want to do is once like MOCO Productions starts getting up and running, I want to go to like the schools in the area and like kind of talk to them about the industry and like let them know that like even if they don't want to be an artist, there are positions that you can get into that don't require you to do art, right?
Yeah. And and that's what I tell people too. It's such a big industry. There's so many different roads that you can go down, and it's interestingly enough, I've had production managers on there, or they may have started out in animation, but they found that, hey, I like production. I like the production side of it. I like the writing side of it. There's so many different spaces that they can go down and lanes that they can go down. Do you think that's what's kind of missing now, with more people going of color and diverse backgrounds going back to, say, younger grade schools and having those kind of talks and really showing the younger ones that this is what I enjoy doing, and you like doing it, you're more than able to do it?
I wouldn't say that. I don't know if I would say that it's missing, because I'm sure there are a lot of people who are like doing that, like actually going back and like talking to younger kids, but I don't feel like a lot of people look at art as like a viable career. So it's not really something that at least my family was like, hey, you can be an artist, right? Because you're more looking at things that can potentially make you the most amount of money. And when people hear artists, like the first thing most people think is like, oh, a starving artist, right? Even though that's not necessarily true.
True. Yeah.
So I wouldn't say it's something that's missing, but I think we have to do a better job of explaining that there are like positions that you can get into within like the arts that can put you in to positions where you're comfortable,
Yeah. And what about, because I think this is the case in especially underserved neighborhoods and things like that, kids having access to equipment and different type of tools that say other schools have the access to. Do you think that's another a big thing that a lot of schools in urban areas just don't have or aren't given the tools to be able to do that?
I definitely think that's a problem for sure, because especially if you live in like an area that doesn't have as much money, just like getting into art school itself, you have to have like some sort of privilege because art school is like so expensive, right? So like it's definitely harder, especially if the schools don't have money, it's definitely harder for those schools to get access to those things, which makes it more difficult for the kids from those areas to get access to like that sort of technology.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate, and I'm dating myself, everybody, a little bit, but I think now, especially with them cutting a lot of extracurricular classes and courses that when I went through school, there were a lot of, whether it was vocational shop or mechanics. I was in a vocational commercial art class, so I had the exposure of early of being in a lot of art classes, where of course, as I got older and got out of school, they started cutting a lot of after school programs and things like that really did give kids the opportunity to experience different things.
Yeah. Like I remember when I was in 7th grade, it's also like STEM classes as well, right? Because I remember when I was in 7th grade, like I told you, I had that one art class, and I don't remember like any other art classes after that. And also I did like a robotics club in 7th grade as well. But like after 7th grade, it just disappeared. Like I don't know what happened to it. I don't know if they just decided like, oh, it's not making us any money, so we're just going to cut it. Yeah. So it's like there's a lot of opportunities that people don't necessarily get based on like their location and like how much money their area has.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely kind of dependent on the area that you're in. Some schools get a lot better facilities and equipments than others, for sure, and I think that's definitely a sad thing to see.
Yeah, for sure.
Like I said, you're wanting to kind of make MOCO this diverse and inclusive space. How do you see yourself kind of getting to that point, or positioning MOCO to be that kind of studio?
So I definitely want to tell like all kinds of stories, right? So, and it's not just like stories with just Black people in it, but I want to tell stories with like everyone, right? And I know that in order to tell those stories, I have to also reflect that like in the studio that I'm building. So I make like very conscious decisions when I'm like hiring people. Like I look at the story that I'm making and I'm saying like, does this story also reflect the people that are working on it, right? Because that's how you get the most authentic stories, right?
Yeah.
So if the people who are working on it can also relate to it, you're going to be able to tell that, like, from the work that comes out.
Yeah. So what are some of the more recent things and animations that you've seen that have really kind of caught your eye and you're like, I really like that, you know?
Recently?
Yeah, because it's funny. There's very few, and I used to say this about because I wanted to be a comic strip artist, but there were, and I love comic strips, but there were very few that made me laugh out loud. I may have chuckled to myself or thought, yeah, it's kind of funny, you know, but made me laugh out loud. What are the ones that, you know, animations that you've seen that you really liked and that's like, man, they really hit it out the park with this one?
So I know this is going to be a callback from last week, but Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse for sure. So like that film made me feel like every emotion you could possibly feel. It's just such a good film, and also it was like relatable as well.
Yeah.
So I think to me, like probably recently within the past few years, that's probably like my favorite one for sure.
Absolutely, yeah. And they did such a great blend as you're starting to see more and more now of 2D and 3D.
Yep.
You're starting to see that a lot more. And I'll kind of put my little 2 cents on there. The ones that I've just seen. There's a new one on net. Actually, if you haven't seen it, I said this last week, on Netflix, Yasuke. If you haven't seen that,
I haven't seen it. I'll write it down. I continue to give big props out to LaShawn Thomas and the team he put together. But it's if you like Afro, if you ever seen Afro Samurai, kind of in that flavor, really good. He also made Cannon Busters. That's also on Netflix. I have seen that though. Yeah.
Well, then you'll love, like I said, which was what got him kind of on the map, Cannon Busters. But this one just released on Netflix last week. Okay. It's the story about the actual first and only Black samurai that was over in Japan. But he made it a really engaging and action-packed story. So, but also threw in a lot of good factual stuff as well. So really a great one to watch. Another one that just came out that I really liked. It was really funny. It made me laugh out loud, which is why I was saying there's very few that make me just laugh out loud. But the Mitchells versus the robots or machines.
I think I've seen like the trailer.
Very funny. That is very funny. Of course, Raya in The Last Dragon that's another great one that you should definitely check out. A great animation for sure. Which is why I say it's not about the characters so much as it is about the story. Does the story relate? Is it relatable? And in every story, regardless of whether it's white characters, Asian characters, Black characters, what, if the story is just a relatable story, everybody will be able to walk out of it with, being able to connect with it on some sort of level.
Definitely. I feel like another good example of that, I just thought about it, was have you seen Kid Cosmic on Netflix?
No, I haven't seen Kid Cosmic, but I've heard about it.
That's a pretty good one. It's like there's a kid, and then there's a toddler, and then there's a Black girl, and she works at a restaurant, and then there's an old man, and they're all superheroes. They all end up becoming superheroes. I think there's like a cat. I think there was a cat as well that became a superhero. So it's like it's a very interesting story. It's actually pretty funny too.
Gotcha. So on that note, do you get into the writing, or do you plan on bringing partnering with other writers and other content, and you like to tend to stay on the animation side of it, or does that doing animation kind of fuel your little writing juices and get that, to write out the story, the script, and everything?
Right. So like usually the idea, like animation itself, like the idea of the animation comes in my head first before like the actual writing part. So as far as writing, like I don't mind writing, but like I would be open to like working with writers. So I mean I don't mind writing, but it's not my favorite thing. It's not my favorite thing to do. I would much rather like be animating or directing the animation rather than writing itself. Like yeah, I would definitely be open for writers. Like I do an outline and then like have writers come in and help me out with the story itself.
Well, that's the beauty. But see, that's the beauty of being in this industry and making relationships. Because, like I said, especially like I said, which is why I love doing this show. Outside of it just highlights diversity. It allows me to connect with so many different people in so many other different areas, like writers, production people that you don't necessarily not necessarily your wheelhouse, but
for sure
it connects you with so many other different people. Miss Salve, Kid Cosmic is so much. She's a Kid Cosmic fan. I'm gonna have to check that out, Kid Cosmic, for sure.
Yeah,
but
but definitely that's like a great thing about this industry is that you can work with other people who are like great at what they do, and then when you come together, like you end up making this amazing story. So like you'll find an amazing character designer, and then you bring them in, and then like you were saying, you find an amazing writer, and then I'm good at animation, so I like animate and maybe find some other people to help me animate as well. Right. So like when you find people who are great at what they do, and then all of those great people come together, you make like amazing stories.
Yeah. And to that point, another great one on Netflix is Animal Crackers. And I had Christian Sava who directed it. He was a guest on the show maybe 4 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but he said the same thing, because I was telling her, I said, man, after I watched that, your name was in just about every portion, director, writer, producer, this and that. And he was like, yeah, but what really helped me was surrounding myself with people, because that was his first animated film that he ever did. And like I said, he was able to do it on get it on Netflix. It really is a great animation. You should check that out, Animal Crackers. But that's what he said. I surrounded myself with a great co-director that already had experience in the industry, and just so many great people. It made my job that much easier, of what I was doing. And you realize you can't do anything alone, and especially an animated film, you're not gonna something like unless you really kill yourself for 2 years working on it. And even then, you still at some point have people help you in certain things that you're doing. So nothing is ever made alone, and that you can do alone. And it's like you said, when you get those people, creative people together, and they're all kind of feeding off of each other, there's such magic that comes out of it when the final project is done. Sure. Like I said, this is such. If you're just tuning in, again, say hello. Just tuning in. I'm sitting down with my good friend DeAndre Reid, 2D animator with Bento Box and MOCO Productions, talking about animation and just the stories that he wants to tell and that's being out there. Looking forward, where do you hope to see this industry kind of go and kind of evolve into?
Yeah, so like we were talking about earlier, like I just want to see stories that represents everyone, right? So, and also like once people get into the industry, I want to see a lot more people get those opportunities to be in like decision-making positions, you know?
Yeah.
So that's really where I want the industry to be, where it like represents everyone, you know?
Yeah. And it's like I said, I mean, we've always known it that, hey, we spend dollars just like everybody else. We probably spend way more dollars in some cases, but I think a lot of studio and obviously the bottom line for most studios is dollars. It doesn't make money. But being able to take those risks and take those steps, I think a lot of studios now, especially with the success of Spider-Man, Into the Spider-Verse, Black Panther, all these movies, Raya and the Last Dragon, all these movies that are diverse movies that are coming out that are making tons of money, and people are, and I think it's going to come down to people craving that and telling studios that that's what they want to see. They want to see diversity. I think people are tired of seeing the same old thing over and over and over again.
And I definitely think it's happening, as far as like people saying that they want to see like diverse characters and like diverse stories told. But like we were talking about earlier, like a lot of these bigger studios, it's easier for them to continue doing what they're doing because it's making them money, and like right now that's not really changing. So it's going to come down to like a lot of content creators and smaller studios to help push it along, you know, because once they see these content creators, like their stuff blowing up, then they're going to want to bring them into the studio and talk to them. And that's also another thing is like, once you create your own stuff and you have an audience for it, it's much easier for you to have leverage when you go into these studios to talk to them about like your project, rather than just like immediately.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why I say now I feel like, and trust me, like I said, I keep dating myself in this show a long time. I grew up before pre-internet and pre YouTube and Facebook, which like and before cell phones. Hey, I remember the long dial-in phone with the rotary dial phones.
I remember those. We had one. It was attached to the wall.
And you had to make sure whoever you were calling were at home, because you weren't going to be able to leave that message. Hey, that's just the way it is. But I love this. Like I said, I'm a child of that time period, but I love this time because of the new technology and the new things that are coming out. And I say this is such a great time for content creators because there's so many different channels of putting your content out there before you even get to Pixar or Disney or anything like that. If you're a filmmaker and you want to make films, hey, there's YouTube. If you're a photographer or illustrator and just want to get your work out there, there's Instagram. There's so many different channels to get your work. And to your point, all the executives, they're doing the same thing that we're doing. They're scouring the internet, looking at talent. And the smart studios, such as Netflix, they are searching and reaching out to those ones that have this base and following of people that really like their work and really enjoy seeing their work. So it's so much easier. Like you said, it puts you in such a different position when you do get to these studios and they do reach out to you.
For sure. Yeah, definitely.
For sure. Man, we are coming up. Well, we've gone a little past the top of the hour there, which, hey, it happens sometimes. Sean, if you're catching this, you're still king. You still reign at 2 hour running time. That's his is 2 hours, so he still reigns top. But we're having a great conversation here with DeAndre Reid, 2D animator and talking shop. What do you like I said, we've talked a lot about what we feel studios have been kind of falling short on. What do you feel like some of the, I mean, and we kind of touched on some of the points too, but what other things can they do to make that, to really make a concerted effort? Like I said, there's some great studios out there doing it. Like I said, I give Netflix a lot of props.
Right.
Netflix, I would say by far is leading the way in the content that they put out and the people that they're bringing on. But what do you feel like studios like these old head Disney, I mean, that have been around for 30 years or more?
So when they do tell these diverse stories, I feel like what they could do is make more of an effort to reach out and look for people who reflect the story that they're looking for sure. Because there's like so many like ways now to find like artists as far as like social media. So like there's no excuse for them to be like, oh, we can't find anyone. Like there's so many ways to find people now. Have you
really tried to find people?
Exactly.
People left and right.
Like you asked your friend if they know anyone, and then you were like, I can't find anyone.
We tried.
Right.
So what do you think? What did you think about because they just won the Oscar? So have you seen Soul?
So I haven't seen Soul. I haven't seen Soul. So I mean I can't really speak on it since I haven't seen the movie. I've seen like a lot of the things people were talking about, but like I can't really like speak more into it because I haven't seen it.
I thought it was real. Like I said, I gave it an A-. I really did. There were a couple of little things I felt like Pixar kind of fell short on, but hey, I think overall it was a great animation. There were a lot of things you obviously could tell that there were people of color working on it because there were things that just really resonated when I was watching it. It was like, okay, like the barbershop scene. I was like, okay, yeah, I get that. And that I totally hits me right there. So definitely I feel like, but to your point, I feel like there's no excuse for studios not to be able to bring in talent, whether it be a writer, whether it be a director, whether it be a producer or a content creator, because we're out there. It's just you got to make the effort to reach out and find those people and really be honest about, and forthright about why you're bringing them in and why you want them in, because you want the diversity of the story.
And another thing as well is that like if you do already have people working for you who like also put them in those positions to be successful as well. Don't just like always go out and like find someone who was at another studio who was successful and then be like, all right, come over here and do this for us. If you have like people within the company who are already working there, who have the talent to do well in those positions, just put them in those positions, give them those opportunities.
And trust, because I felt that way. Like I said, that was kind of one of the things I felt about Soul. And they had a black co-director, and no disrespect to Pete Docter, I love his stuff. I love all the stuff that he's put, but I definitely felt like, okay, well, if this was going to be the animation that you were going to do, and it was going to be told from a black point of view, I think you definitely had, because at the time, and actually he did work on it. Frank Abney did some animated work on it. Totally capable, and actually his animated short got put on Netflix. So he obviously was capable of directing. You know, and that was something I felt like, okay, you could have just, you know, gave him the reins and let him run it with it, you know, because he obviously has the chops to direct.
I think a lot of times they don't want to like 100% jump into it, so they like kind of dip their toe, like, oh, well, we'll give you kind of an opportunity, but we're also going to bring in this other person that we know has made successful things before, right? So like obviously, like no shade to like anybody else who has who worked on the film, like everyone is talented in their was talented who worked on that film. Right.
Is talented in their own right, but I felt like I said, if you were really going to take that step and like I said, if you were going to tell it from a black point of view, go ahead and give them the reins to do it.
Right. For sure.
Is it Sony? Does Sony own or is it Disney that owns did Black Panther? Was it Sony?
I think so. Yeah, I think it was.
It might have been Sony. Either way, they gave it was a black director that helmed the story and made it his own, and obviously was able to tell it in an authentic way. And
like
I said, it blew all the other superhero movies out box office wise. So it's obvious that there's talent out there that can do it,
and people resonated with it, right?
Everybody resonated with it.
Which is why it was so popular.
Yeah, it wasn't just blacks that resonated. Everybody resonated with it. So obviously, like I said, even with an entirely black cast, entirely black production crew, writers, directors, producers, and all of that, it still resonated with everybody, and everybody loved it, and it still made box office records. So the fact that, you know, companies are out there saying, well, we can't find this writer or director is I think calling BS.
At this point, it's not an excuse.
I'll call it BS. It's just BS. you can find people if you want to, but I think, like you said, it's going to come down to content creators, which is what I hope. I mean, everybody loves to get at Pixar or Disney and work for this and that, but I would hope that, you know, as you go through those and learn the process and come up with your own stories, that you take the initiative to own your own stories and get them out there. Like I said, even if you have to go the route of, you know, putting it on YouTube or even shopping it yourself. Like I said, and I like to use him as an example. Tyler Perry, he did that with Medea. He made sure that he owned, that was his thing, and doggone it.
Yep. And look where he is now. And look where he is now.
Yeah, look where he practically owns Atlanta. So, I mean, he made it what it is, and he did it his way. I mean, I like his plays better than I did his TV shows and movies, but I give him all the props for how the grassroots way in which he built himself.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, and I would hope people like him that have the clout, that have the money, that have the just the backing, people like him, like Oprah and all the other like millionaires and people out there, start backing a lot of content creators and allowing them to tell their stories as well.
Yeah, that now that you say that brings up another point. Like, so if you're creating a story, you don't necessarily if you don't necessarily want to go to a big studio. If you're creating a story and you're like, I want a black director to direct this story, you don't necessarily want to go to a bigger studio and be like, hey, can you hire a black director to work on my film and I'll hand it over to you. Because usually what's going to happen is they're going to hire a black director, but that black director is going to make way less money than the money you're giving that studio to make your film or your story or whatever. So I think a better option would to be going to studios that reflect the story that you're trying to tell, you know, instead of asking them to make a decision and decide, like asking them to make that decision rather than you just taking it into your hands and finding a place that you feel could genuinely tell your story. Right. And that's not just like black stories, that's like stories in general.
In general, and which is why I think a lot of people, and which is why Netflix is doing so well, because they allow content creators to create their stories and tell stories whatever way they want to tell their stories, and they're backing it. And obviously, a lot of studios are, hopefully more, are starting to see the success of that. That people want to see just different content, and content creators want to, if they have a story and an idea of their own, they want to go to a place that's going to give them the freedom to create that story their way. You know? Yeah,
because with those bigger studios comes a lot of like restrictions as well. So there's because a lot of times, especially if you don't have like the that huge story with a big following, they're going to have a lot of like things that they're going to say, you can't do this in the story, you can't do this in the story, and it's going to like really like change a lot of what you originally intended to be in the story, you know?
It's funny, like I said, that which, like I said, you really should go back and watch. If you have Netflix, you should really watch, like I said, the Pixar story, because that they were saying the same thing when they went to Disney to do Toy Story. Disney had this idea of what they wanted the story, and it just was not good. They ended up scrapping it. The Pixar ended up scrapping the story and finally just saying, screw it, we're going to do it the way we want. We want to tell the story the way we want to tell it and the way we feel that it should be told. And obviously you see how that turned out. So big studios, they're thinking dollars and all, the way that they feel like you should tell the story, which goes back to the point of what you're saying. I think change is going to come from a lot of the smaller, more nimble studios that do appreciate the creative quality and the creative story behind it.
For sure. Definitely.
All right. Well, like I said, this has been a fun conversation. I always like to keep it relatively short because it gives me the opportunity to definitely bring you back on the show because I know a lot of things are kicking off and happening with you, DeAndre, MOCO Productions. I'm expecting to see a lot of great things coming out of that for sure, because I know you got a lot of great stories to tell. Let me throw some comments up here. I am proud of his hard work and motivation. Thank you, Miss Lauren Woods. It's definitely one of the, James Brown would say, one of the hardest working men. For sure. We appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate everybody that tunes in, comes on and tunes in for sure. Make sure that you connect with DeAndre. I want to throw up some of his stuff here. Connect with him. Check out MOCO Productions. You saw the video there, and he has a video on his website showing what some of the work that MOCO does. Make sure you connect with him. Check out his work there. You can also check him out on Twitter.com at DeAndre J. Reid. Active on there. Instagram, you can check out some of his stuff on at DeAndre J.Reid. Check out more of his work on Instagram. He's also very active on LinkedIn, which is where we connected. Of course, DeAndre. Check him out there. Again, all these links are going to be in the show notes, so you'll be able to jump and check out the show notes and connect with them from there. Again, if you are tuning in from Facebook and LinkedIn, I highly encourage you to go to my YouTube channel, subscribe, hit the bell notification, check out this episode, and check out all the other great past episodes that I've had to date so far, and looking to just continue to ratchet it up for sure. Appreciate you, my man, coming on and chopping it up with me, DeAndre.
Thanks for having me.
So looking forward to having you back and updating what's going on with MOCO for sure. If you can, just hang around for a few minutes back in the green room while I close this out. That way I can, talk to you just for a minute beforehand. All right?
All right, cool.
Everybody, like I said, show some props. Go to the channel, check out the show, give it a thumbs up. Better yet, put a comment in. Let us know what you think for sure. But give a great hand to my guest and my friend DeAndre for gracing us with his presence and again being a part of the Color of Motion family. I appreciate you coming on, bro.
Thank you. Thank you.
Guys, like I said, this is, as always, we have some great guests come on, and like I said, I again can't thank DeAndre enough for agreeing to be on the show and blessing us with his presence, and really just sharing his insights on his journey, industry as a whole, and what's going on. Make sure that you also reach out to me. You can connect with me. Shoot me an email, don.terrell@dggraphics.com, or connect with me on all my channels here. Always mess that up. LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Definitely, if you have any guest requests or anything that you want to see, any suggestions, I'm always open for that for sure. So super excited to hear from everybody. Let me know, like I said, your thoughts on the show. Again, super excited behind me. Super excited to be unveiling the new updated and improved iteration of the show with you guys. Also, like I said, next week's guest is going to be another hot one. I've been so excited to sit down with and talk with my man Marcus Williams, doing some awesome work. We're going to sit down and talk about his project, Tuskegee Airs, awesome graphic comic that's coming out and probably going to be look to be a good animated series there. I know he's working on that for sure, but as you can see, he does some great illustration work, comic book work for sure. So I'm super excited to sit down with him and talk about Tuskegee Airs and the projects that he's working on. So make sure that you join me next week, same time, same channel, for sure. It's going to be a great show. I'm super excited. As always, I appreciate everybody that tunes in and supports the show and the channel. Looking forward again to bringing even better and more shows to you. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great weekend. Make sure that you're kind to somebody and nice to somebody. Kindness is free. It doesn't cost anything for sure. So make sure you do that. Again, check out the show notes to grab the links to connect with DeAndre. And I appreciate, again, everybody that tunes in. So with that, we are going to close out another great episode of The Color of Motion. I expect to see everybody back here next Saturday, 3 p.m. Central Standard Time, and have a great weekend.